Lots out there on this day. Marc Short joining me now, former Chief of Staff to Vice President Mike Pence. And Elizabeth Pipko is the former spokeswoman over at the RNC. Hello to you both. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Those are three big challenges before the president, right? You've got all of a sudden this Musk moment. You've got China and you got Russia. Let's start with the big, beautiful bill. You were the one or one of the very big key players in the first tax bill in 2017. Elon Musk all of a sudden sort of inserting himself into this. Joe K sort of hit on this, Mark. Does that matter at the end of the day?
I think it matters, but I don't think it's consequential. I think because we're now having negative, news cycles continuing to talk about this. But I think we all need to take a breath and recognize when you have a bill that's this large, it's not going to be perfect. But the reality is that the alternative of having a $4.5 trillion increase on the American people is a very negative consequence. And so I think there's a lot to be supportive.
You're talking about if the bill isn't passed and then taxes
There's a lot to be supportive. And I think it's a little bit rich for a guy who made his fortune on the back of American taxpayers with subsidies to electric vehicles and direct payments from the federal government for his space initiatives to all of a sudden say the bill has too much pork in it.
So there you go. You're a little leery of Musk, right? And I guess this is sort of the new. Is this a new friction within the Republican Party?
No, I think that Musk did a great service with Doge. I think it's great to find spending cuts, but at the same time, I think it's hard for him to be in a position of saying the bill has too much pork when his whole fortune has been created off the backs of American taxpayers.
This came out of nowhere. I don't know if it came out of nowhere, but it's just sort of. I mean, he was there in the White House days ago. I got Mike Johnson being like, what happened in the last 24 hours?
Right. I don't think this means he wouldn't still get a key to the White House, right? People disagree. Elon Musk is not a lifelong Republican. I don't even know if he's a Republican right now. So his opinion is not that relevant on this. At the same time, it's also nice.
You don't think it's relevant?
I don't think it's relevant to Donald Trump or most Republicans. I think people are curious what's going on in his mind because he's been a key player for the last, couple of months.
No threat to primaries? Because he's basically saying out there, look, if you don't do certain things, we're coming after you in 2026.
Let's not forget, before all of this happened, before Donald Trump won in November, he was not really involved and decided, look what is on the ballot, look what I have to do with this decision, and decided to obviously get behind Donald Trump. So the fact is, when the primaries come around and he has to make a decision, I'm pretty confident he's going to back Donald Trump and Republicans anyway.
We learned this morning the president's schedule was basically kind of wide open. And I was wondering, what's going on? This has been a couple days now. And Elizabeth, now we know he was talking to Vladimir Putin for about an hour and 15 minutes or so. President Trump says Putin made it very clear. Russia is not going to stop bombing Ukraine anytime soon. He said it was a phone call about attacks on both sides. It was a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace. Where does Trump go from here now? Because he talked about solving this thing on day one.
He did. Look, I think when it comes to Donald Trump, he has to answer for a 3-year mess. The fact is that Donald Trump was there when Putin initially invaded. I don't think what happened would have happened. I think in April of 22, there would have been a chance for America, Donald Trump, to not get in the way of the agreement that was supposed to be made. The war would not have continued on, and now we're in this mess. The fact is Donald Trump isn't called an isolationist. He's not. He's talking to Putin. He's talking to everyone involved. He has an envoy on the scene. The fact is he wants to do whatever it takes for peace, but with that comes serious challenges.
Do you think that Trump thought he would have these, as Elizabeth said, serious challenges right now with Putin? Or do you think he thought he would have had this solved and sort of what's the next move here?
I think he knew that the challenge was. I think he probably assumed he would solve it faster. But, I long for the days that Republicans actually had a position to say that when a former KGB dictator invades a country, slaughters women and children, steals children, brings them back across country lines, that your position would be to say, let's allow Ukraine to defend itself. That's the fastest way to peace.
So that's the position of your old boss, Mike Pence. President Trump's, of course,
in the first Trump administration, Blake. I mean, let's be honest.
Putin doesn't want peace. Putin wants Ukraine. The time has come for President Trump and the U.S. Senate to enact harsh sanctions on Russia and increase military support for Ukraine.
Let's keep in mind, it was the policy of the first administration. It was the one that actually prevented Nord Stream 2. It was the Trump administration that actually took out 100 Russian mercenaries in Syria when they crossed the red line. The president of the first administration was very tough on Russia. And so I welcome the chance to actually return to those same policies that I think contained Russia.
Do you think he needs to return to what Mike Pence is saying there?
I don't. I think the fact is Joe Biden, for 3 years, funded this war, and look what happened. There is no way that continuing to fund this war is proven to actually end anything. The fact is people don't want to talk about it. Look at the effort going on to keep Iran from a nuclear weapon. Russia has a nuclear arsenal bigger than really anyone out there except for us. So if we do end up in World War III, as Donald Trump calls it, who has to stop it? The United States of America.
All right. The Biden administration tied the hands of Ukraine with the weapons that were provided. They never allowed them the freedom to actually defend themselves. Let's go back to returning to that policy like it was in the first Trump administration.
So if that's Musk and then that's Russia, let me end here with China, because the president said today, by the way, and I'm not equating all these, but these are three of the big ones before him. He said he had a phone call or he said she rather is very tough, and he is extremely hard to make a deal with. I keep reminding people that from the very first tariff in 2018 to the phase one trade deal at the end of 2019, that was 20 months, Mark. And I'm just wondering here if Trump is sort of starting to remind the American people, you know what, this could take a while with China.
I think that's okay. I think American people can be supportive of tariffs against China because I think they are our nation's greatest adversary today. I think that's what the president did well in the first administration, was rallying the world to focus on China. I think the challenge is when you assess tariffs across the globe universally, to friend and foe alike, it's harder now to rally our allies against China, number one. And number two, I think that for China, what they've seen is this when you have this tariff policy universally and the bond markets react as they did, I think Xi probably feels like he can wait this out because he knows that there'll be a negative consequence in the market.
Is that what he's doing here?
You know, I can't speak for him, obviously, but I don't want to.
No, I know.
No, but the fact is we have a lot of issues with China, right? We're not just talking on tariffs. We're talking about the threat that is China, the fact that you're talking about Ukraine, the fact that most of our defense, let's say our resources that were spent being given to Zelensky in Ukraine are now missing, and we don't have them to support what's going on in China to try to protect Taiwan, to get involved. The fact is it's a very complicated situation. Donald Trump was not put in an easy spot, but I think if anyone...
He did bring the tariff issue, though, onto himself.
100%. He's talked about it for how many, 40, 50 years that he was going to, and the fact is it takes some time to clean up the last mess and fix the future.
Two different voices within the party of power right now. Elizabeth, Marc, see you both later in the show. Appreciate it. Still